a time in which people on the African continent were minding their own business, tending to their businesses and their fields, raising their young and caring for their old, when on certain times during a period of 300 years, individuals being snatched up from their homes and dragged to the coastlines and laid in horrible ships that were constructed for human cargo. I spent a lot of time traveling to Kenya, where I lived. I had the opportunity and the privilege to live there for 11 years. And so one of the things that I've done with that life is to now take people from the United States over to Kenya to interact with women groups and to be involved in development projects in Kenya. And the first time that I did this was in the year 2000. And as I took these women there, we sat in the backyard of our hostess, a very fabulous backyard, very elegant. There were chefs there with the big white chef hats, and they were roasting goat on a pit fire. They were cooking incredible meals and laying a feast before us, and we sat talking in this backyard to our guests who had come from all over Kenya to meet with us. And one of my colleagues was showing some photographs of pictures of the American experience, and she said, and this is the Jack and Jill, and this is an African-American organization. And she was explaining that. And this elder looked at her and said, you keep calling yourselves African-Americans. Where from Africa do you come from? And we said, well, we don't know that. You see, the records have not been very well kept. In fact, we know now that people may have left the continent from Senegal, from Ghana, but we have understood now that people have come from even the interior of Africa, and they were dragged to the coastlines. And this has occurred over such a long period of time, and the records were very scantily kept. And as we began to explain that to her, she got an epiphany. And she said, oh, you must be the stolen ones. And we said, the stolen ones? Who are they? Well, she began to explain that she came from a place called Taita in Kenya, just along the Indian Ocean. And that the stories she had heard as a young child dated back many generations. In fact, where people just would go missing. In her family, it was a young girl, she recalled, who had gone to the marketplace to a nearby village, and she was gone to sell her fruits and vegetables and just disappeared. She didn't come back home. Now, after a few days of waiting for their daughter, her parents got very worried and very, very nervous. They called the men from her clan together, and they sat them down and they said, our daughter is missing, you must help us find her. And the men gathered together and they organized a search party. They went all over the place. They went from village to village. They even went to the edge of the waters to see if they could find this young girl, but they were defeated. So they came back home after months of search, and they said, your daughter must be dead. And at that time, they mourned, and they were in horrible grief. And then it was at the end of their lives now that they had realized so many people in many different families had gone missing in the same exact way. And the stories had come back to them that in fact, they were not dead, but rather they were stolen and taken to the coastlines, put in ships, to serve the purposes of the transatlantic slave trade. And every year, as these families mourned the absence of their young daughter, and many families did the same, they began to remember, as they remembered their own ancestors, as we're doing today. They would always call, and then there were the stolen ones. So she told us that story. She looked at us in the eyes and she said, so you must be the stolen ones returning home. Welcome home.